Have you ever smiled like that before? The question came through Anthony Moretti's phone screen as he sat alone in his penthouse that night, staring at the message from Luca. I've never seen Tony smile like that. Anthony set the phone down and looked at his reflection in the darkened window. 38 years old, 20 years in a world where smiles were weapons or lies. But tonight, sitting across from a woman who didn't know his name, his real name, he'd smiled. Really smiled. Grace Miller, 27 years old, piano teacher. She taught disabled children how to make music with hands that didn't always cooperate. She talked about her students the way other people talked about miracles. She had no idea who he was, no idea that the man who'd listened to her was the same man whose family name appeared in sealed FBI files, whose organization controlled shipping routes across 3 states, whose father had died in an explosion that killed 11 other people, including her 16-year-old brother. Anthony picked up his phone again and typed a response. Maybe I'm finally learning how. He hit send, then opened his desk drawer. Inside lay his signet ring, heavy gold engraved with the Moretti crest. He hadn't worn it in public for 5 years. Grace Miller was safer not knowing. But safety, Anthony was beginning to realize, might not be the same as happiness, and for the first time in a decade, he wanted both. What happens when the person who makes you feel most alive is the one person who should fear you most? 4 hours earlier, Anthony had arrived at the small Italian restaurant on Hanover Street, with every intention of leaving after 20 minutes. Luca had been insisting on this blind date idea for weeks. You need to remember what normal feels like, Tony. Just coffee and conversation with someone who doesn't want anything from you. Everyone wants something, Anthony had replied. Not Grace Miller. Luca had shown him the file anyway. Anthony always read the files. Grace Miller, 27, piano teacher. Lived modestly in Jamaica Plain, drove a 10-year-old Honda, volunteered at the Children's Hospital on weekends. And there, buried in the background check, one line that made Anthony's chest tighten. Brother Daniel Miller, deceased 2014, waterfront explosion victim. Anthony had nearly canceled, but he'd come to the restaurant, ordered his security to wait across the street, sat by the window and waited. Then she'd walked in. Grace Miller wore a soft blue cardigan and jeans, no jewelry except small silver earrings. When the restaurant owner greeted her by name, she'd smiled, the kind of smile that made the room feel warmer. She'd sat at the bar, laughing at something the owner said, and when her eyes had met Anthony's across the room, she'd looked away quickly, blushing. Luca had appeared then. Grace Miller, meet Anthony. Anthony, this is Grace. I have a feeling you two are going to get along beautifully. Grace had extended her hand. It's nice to meet you, Anthony. He'd shaken her hand carefully. Likewise. They'd sat. A candle flickered between them. So, Grace had folded her hands on the checkered tablecloth. What kind of work do you do? Anthony had rehearsed this answer. Logistics, import-export, all technically true, all carefully vague. I run a logistics company. Shipping, warehousing, supply chain management. Making sure things get where they need to go. That sounds complicated. It has its challenges. Grace had tilted her head. But do you enjoy it? Or is it just something you do? The question had caught him off guard. No one ever asked if he enjoyed his work. I make sure things run smoothly, he'd said carefully. Make sure people are taken care of. That's not what I asked. Her smile had been gentle. Do you wake up excited about your day? It's meaningful work, he'd said finally. It matters to people who depend on me. I can respect that. Life's too short to waste on work that doesn't matter. What about you? Anthony had found himself genuinely curious. What made you choose teaching? I teach piano to children with disabilities. Kids with cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, autism, conditions that make motor control difficult. Some can't even hold a pencil, but we find ways. That sounds rewarding. It is. Grace had paused. I lost my younger brother when I was 19, Daniel. He was only 16. He loved music. After he died, I needed to do something that mattered, something that honored him. Anthony's throat had tightened. He'd known about Daniel Miller from the file. Victim number 7. 16 years old. Wrong place, wrong time. A war Anthony's family had been part of. I'm very sorry for your loss, he'd said quietly. Thank you. Grace had met his eyes. After Daniel died, I realized we spend so much time just existing. The people who matter are driven by something deeper. So what really drives you? Anthony had sat with the question. I try to protect people, he'd said finally. People who can't always protect themselves. People who need someone in their corner. Grace's expression had warmed. That's really beautiful. And then Anthony Moretti had smiled. Really smiled. Grace had noticed and smiled back. Should we order something? She'd asked. Yeah, Anthony had said. I'd really like that. They'd ordered, talked. The minutes became hours. Grace told him about her students. Marcus working on Beethoven, Sarah who played with her feet, Jamie learning one-handed after a birth defect. Anthony listened, genuinely fascinated, and shared carefully edited stories about logistics, solving complex problems, keeping people employed, building something that lasted. None of it was a lie. All of it was incomplete. When the check came, Anthony insisted on paying. Next time, it's on me, Grace had said. Next time? Anthony had raised an eyebrow. I had a wonderful time. If you did too. I had a wonderful time, Anthony had said, meaning it. If you're already feeling the pull of this story, hit subscribe. We share tales of love and second chances every night. 20 minutes later, Anthony stood under the restaurant awning, watching Grace hail a cab in the gentle rain. She'd turned back, umbrella in hand. Thank you for tonight. I really had a wonderful time. So did I. Maybe we could do this again? Coffee sometime? I'd like that very much. The cab had pulled up. Grace had waved, and then she was gone. Anthony had stood there longer than necessary, hands in his pockets, breathing in the cool October air. Across the street, his security waited in a black sedan. His phone had buzzed. Luca. I saw that smile, Tony. You're welcome. Luca. She's good for you. Don't screw this up. Anthony had slid into the sedan without responding. His driver pulled away smoothly. Back at his penthouse, the city spread out below floor-to-ceiling windows. Anthony poured whiskey and left it untouched on the marble counter. His phone had lit up. Grace, I had a wonderful time tonight. Thank you for listening. Really listening. That's rarer than you might think. Sleep well. Grace Anthony had stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. Anthony. So did I. Thank you for sharing your world with me. Sleep well. He'd hit send, then opened his desk drawer. The signet ring sat there, heavy and accusatory. Beside it, a faded photograph. His father, uncle, and 2 cousins, taken 6 months before the explosion. They were all smiling, all dead now. The explosion had been meant to look like gang warfare, territory disputes, the kind of violence that came with the life they'd chosen. But Anthony had never believed the official story, and over 10 years, he'd slowly pieced together the truth. Vincent Romano, his father's most trusted advisor, the man who'd walked away from the organization 3 months after the explosion, claiming he wanted a clean life, the man who'd planted the bomb. Anthony had known for 5 years, had evidence for 3. But Vincent had built his new life carefully, hiding behind legitimate businesses and charitable donations and a face that belonged on a billboard, not a wanted poster. Taking him down would require patience, planning, and evidence so airtight that even the best lawyers couldn't wiggle free. Anthony had been willing to wait, had been content to wait. But tonight, sitting across from Grace Miller, listening to her talk about her brother who'd loved music and died too young, tonight, waiting felt like cowardice. Anthony closed the drawer and walked to the window. Rain streaked the glass, distorting the city lights into abstract patterns. Grace deserved the truth about her brother, deserved justice, but giving her that truth meant revealing his own, meant showing her the world he came from, the things he'd done, the name he carried, and once she knew, she'd never look at him the same way again. Anthony's phone buzzed again. Luca. Seriously, Tony, don't overthink this. Let yourself have something good. Anthony stared at the message, then typed back. Anthony, what if good and true can't exist in the same place? Luca, then you make a choice. Which one matters more? Anthony didn't respond, because he already knew the answer. Grace Miller mattered more than his secrets, which meant eventually he was going to have to tell her everything and lose her. The thought felt like falling. 3 weeks became a pattern. Coffee on Tuesday mornings at a small cafe in Back Bay, where the barista knew Grace's order by heart. Vanilla latte with oat milk, extra foam. Anthony learned to arrive 10 minutes early just to watch her walk in. The way her face lit up when she saw him already there. Lunch on Thursdays at different places each week. Grace insisted on trying new restaurants, claiming Boston was too full of incredible food to eat at the same place twice. Anthony, who'd eaten at the same 3 restaurants for a decade, found himself enjoying the adventure. Dinner on Saturday nights, when Grace's teaching schedule was lighter and Anthony could justify leaving the office before midnight. They talked about everything and nothing. Grace shared stories about her students. Marcus finally mastering Ode to Joy, Sarah composing her first original melody with her feet, Jamie learning to play one-handed after a birth defect left him with limited mobility in his right arm. Anthony found himself captivated by the way she talked about these children, not with pity, not with condescension, with pure, unfiltered admiration for their courage and determination. They don't see limitations the way we do, Grace had explained over Thai food one Thursday. When I tell Marcus he can't play a certain piece because it requires 2 fully functional hands, he just looks at me like I'm the one with the limitation, like I'm the one who doesn't understand what's possible. And you know what? He's usually right. That's incredible, Anthony had said. That's life, Grace had replied. Everyone has limitations. The question is whether you let them define you or just work around them. Anthony had thought about that for days, his limitations, the organization he'd inherited, the legacy he carried, the violence that lived in his blood whether he wanted it there or not. Were those defining him? Or had he simply never considered working around them? Meanwhile, his other life continued in parallel. Monday morning meetings with his lieutenants, reviewing shipping manifests and distribution schedules. Tuesday afternoons handling disputes, a restaurant owner behind on protection payments, a construction crew that needed union problems to disappear, a shipping container that absolutely could not be inspected by customs. Wednesday nights at his legitimate logistics company, the one with an office downtown and a board of directors and quarterly earnings reports. The business that laundered enough money to keep federal investigators occupied with paperwork while the real work happened elsewhere. Thursday mornings reviewing the Vincent Romano file with Luca, adding new evidence, building the case piece by careful piece. Friday briefings with his financial advisor, moving money through shells and trusts and offshore accounts in patterns so complex that even he sometimes lost track of where it all went. Saturday mornings at the boxing gym, working the heavy bag until his knuckles bled and his mind went quiet. And then Saturday nights with Grace, where none of that existed. 2 worlds, his and hers, and the space between them growing narrower every day. One afternoon, Grace called him while he was in a meeting with 3 lieutenants about a shipment that had gone missing. Anthony had excused himself immediately, taking the call in his private office. "Anthony!" Grace's voice was breathless with excitement. "Something amazing just happened." "What's going on?" "Someone donated $50,000 to St. Catherine's, anonymously. We can finally afford everything we've been dreaming about. adaptive instruments for kids with limited mobility, wheelchair-accessible practice rooms, software that lets nonverbal students compose music, scholarships for families who can't afford lessons. It's a complete miracle. Anthony leaned back in his chair, looking out at the Boston skyline. He'd made the donation 3 days ago through one of his shell companies, structuring it carefully to ensure complete anonymity. That's wonderful, Grace. The kids deserve it. I just wish I knew who to thank. Whoever they are, they're literally changing lives. Do you know what this means for kids like Marcus and Jamie? They'll have opportunities we couldn't even offer before. Maybe that's thanks enough, Anthony said quietly, knowing they made a real difference. You always see the best in people, Grace said, her voice softening. That's one of the things I really love about you. The word hung in the air between them. Love. Grace. I should go, she said quickly. Sister Margaret wants to start planning how we'll use the funds. But I wanted to share the news with you. You're the first person I called. I'm honored. See you Saturday? Absolutely. After they hung up, Anthony sat in silence for a long time. She loved him. Or was starting to. And she didn't even know his last name. Luca entered without knocking, reading Anthony's expression immediately. You told her yet? No. Tony, I know. The longer you wait, the worse it gets. I know. Luca sat down across from him. She's going to find out eventually. Better it comes from you than from a news report or a Google search. And when she finds out, she's gone. You understand that, right? Grace Miller's brother died in an explosion my family was involved with. When she learns my name, your family didn't plant that bomb. Vincent did. My family created the world where that bomb made sense, where a man could kill 16 people to gain power and think it was just business. Anthony's voice was hard. I can give her justice for her brother, but I can't give her innocence back, and I can't undo what my name represents. So what are you going to do? Anthony pulled the Vincent Romano file toward him. I'm going to finish this, get Vincent arrested, give Grace the truth about her brother, and then I'm going to tell her everything and let her decide. And if she walks away, then she walks away. Luca studied him. You're different than you were a month ago. Softer. More, I don't know, human. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. Luca stood. For what it's worth, I think she's good for you. I think she makes you want to be better. Wanting isn't enough. It's a start. That night, Anthony drove past St. Catherine's Music Center after hours. Through the windows, he could see colorful posters on the walls, small chairs arranged in a semicircle, and Grace's piano in the corner, an old upright that had probably been there for decades. Her world, gentle and purposeful and good. Everything his wasn't. His phone buzzed. Grace. Thinking of you. Hope today was kind. Anthony stared at the message, then typed back. Anthony. It was. Because you're in it. He hit send before caution could stop him. One of these days, he was going to have to stop hiding. Stop pretending he could live in both worlds. One of these days, he was going to have to choose. But not tonight. Tonight, he could still be the man Grace believed him to be. Tomorrow would come soon enough. The concert was Grace's idea. The kids have been working so hard, she'd told Anthony over coffee the previous Tuesday. We're doing a small showcase for parents and friends this Saturday afternoon. Nothing fancy, just a celebration of how far they've come. Would you like to come? I'd really love for you to be there. Anthony had meetings scheduled, 3 contract negotiations and a sit-down with a union representative who'd been causing problems at one of his construction sites. He'd canceled all of them. Saturday afternoon, he arrived at St. Catherine's early, slipping into the back row of folding chairs. Parents filled the other seats, phones and cameras ready, tissues already in hand because they knew what was coming. The overwhelming pride of watching their children do something everyone had said was impossible. Grace stood at the front of the room in a simple yellow dress that somehow made the entire space feel brighter. She moved between the students, adjusting chairs, offering quiet encouragement, radiating a calm confidence that made even the most nervous child relax. When everyone was settled, Grace stepped to the microphone. "Thank you all for coming. What you're about to witness is more than just music. It's courage. It's determination. It's proof that limitations are often just invitations to find a different path." She smiled. "Our first performer is Marcus Hayes. Marcus has cerebral palsy, which affects his fine motor control. 6 months ago, he told me he wanted to learn Beethoven's Ode to Joy. I told him it would be challenging. He told me challenges were just opportunities wearing disguises." Laughter rippled through the audience. "Marcus has been practicing every single day since then. What you're about to hear isn't perfect. It's something better. It's real. It's human. And it's absolutely inspirational." Marcus wheeled himself to the piano, his hands visibly shaking as he positioned them over the keys. The room fell silent. He began. The notes came slowly, unevenly. Some were wrong. Many were beautiful. When a note fell flat, Marcus paused for just a second, then kept playing, refusing to let the mistake define the moment. Grace stood beside him, not helping, not interfering, just being present. When he stumbled over a difficult passage, she simply nodded, silently reminding him he could do this. 3 minutes later, Marcus played the final chord. The room erupted in applause. Parents were crying. Other students were cheering. Grace knelt beside Marcus, whispering something only he could hear. Whatever she said made him grin through his tears, and she gently wiped them away with her thumb. Anthony felt pressure building behind his own eyes. He hadn't cried in 15 years, not since his father's funeral. But watching Marcus triumph over his own body, watching Grace celebrate that triumph like it was the most important thing in the world, it broke something open inside him. The concert continued. Sarah played a melody with her feet, her face scrunched in concentration. Jamie performed a one-handed version of "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" that somehow sounded more complex and beautiful than the original. Each child was celebrated not for perfection, but for courage. After the concert, Grace found Anthony by the door, surprise and joy lighting her face. "You came." "Of course I came. You invited me." "I know, but I thought you might be busy." "Nothing is more important than this." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "That means more than you know." They walked to a nearby cafe, autumn air crisp and cool, leaves swirling in shades of gold and crimson. "What you do with those children," Anthony said carefully, "the way you see them, not as limitations but as whole people with unique paths, it's powerful. It's motivational in the truest sense. You're not just teaching music, you're teaching them that they matter exactly as they are." Grace's cheeks flushed. "I'm just showing up consistently. They're the ones doing the actual work. Don't minimize what you do. You give them something rare. You give them belief, not pity, not sympathy, actual belief that they're capable of more than anyone else thought possible." She glanced at him, something shifting in her expression. "You do the same thing, you know." "How do you figure that?" "You listen to people like they matter. You pay attention. You remember details. Last week I mentioned Marcus was struggling with a difficult passage, and the next time we talked, you asked about it specifically. Most people don't do that. Most people just wait for their turn to talk." She paused. "You make people feel seen. That's rarer than you think." Anthony didn't know how to respond. He'd spent 20 years learning to read people, learning to understand their motivations and fears and desires so he could use that information to his advantage. But Grace made it sound like something beautiful instead of something calculated. "Grace," he said carefully, "if you learned things about my past, difficult things, things that might change how you see me, would you want to know? Or would you rather just..." Keep things as they are. She stopped walking. The question hung between them, heavy with meaning. That's not a hypothetical, is it? Grace said quietly. No. Have you hurt people? Anthony considered lying, considered deflecting, but Grace deserved at least partial truth. I've made choices, he said slowly. Some I'm proud of. Others I wish I could undo. I've done things in the name of protection that might not look like protection from the outside. I've compromised my values to serve what I thought was a greater good, and I've carried secrets that feel heavier every day. Grace studied him, her expression unreadable. Are you trying to be better now? Today? In this moment? Every single day? Then that's what matters. She took his hand. Everyone has a past, Anthony. Everyone has things they regret. The question isn't whether you've made mistakes. It's whether you're committed to not repeating them. Her hand was warm, trusting, steady. Anthony wanted to tell her everything right then, wanted to lay out every truth, every secret, every ugly reality of who he was and where he came from. But the words wouldn't come. Because once he told her, this moment would end. These 3 perfect weeks would become nothing but a memory of the last time someone had looked at him like he was good. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For seeing the best in me, even if I'm not sure it's really there. Grace squeezed his hand. It's there. I see it. And for a few more minutes, Anthony let himself believe her. It happened on a Tuesday evening. Grace was at home, folding laundry in front of the television. The evening news played in the background, nothing that required her attention. Then the anchor's voice changed. Breaking news tonight as federal investigators announced they're reopening the case of the 2014 waterfront explosion that killed 12 people. Authorities say new evidence suggests connections to organized crime, specifically the Moretti crime family, one of Boston's most notorious mafia organizations. Grace's hands stilled. The screen showed footage she'd tried to forget. Police tape, rubble, emergency responders, body bags. Her brother's face flashed on screen. Daniel Miller, age 16, student at Boston Latin, one of 12 victims. The anchor continued. The explosion also killed Anthony Moretti Sr., identified as the head of the Moretti organization. Federal prosecutors now say they have evidence suggesting the bombing was an internal power struggle rather than rival gang violence. Another photo appeared. Anthony Moretti Sr. Grace reached for the remote with shaking hands. Moretti's son, Anthony Moretti Jr., reportedly took control following his father's death. While federal investigators have pursued the family for years, they've been unable to make charges stick. Grace didn't hear the rest. She was already grabbing her laptop, typing with trembling fingers. Anthony Moretti, Boston. The results appeared instantly. Dozens of articles, photos, court documents, FBI reports. Anthony Moretti Jr., 38, alleged head of Moretti organization following father's death, suspected involvement in money laundering, extortion, protection schemes, maintains control through legitimate business front, Moretti Logistics, LLC. Grace clicked on image search, and her screen filled with photos. Some were grainy surveillance shots. Others were from charity events and business conferences. But in 3 of them, she could see him clearly. Anthony. Her Anthony. The man who'd listened to her talk about music and smiled like he meant it, who'd come to her students' concert and cried during Marcus's performance, who'd looked at her like she was the most important thing in the world. Anthony Moretti Jr., son of a mafia boss, allegedly running the same criminal organization, and the explosion that killed his father, the same explosion that killed her brother. Grace's stomach lurched. She barely made it to the bathroom. Afterward, she sat on the cool tile floor, shaking. I try to protect people who can't always protect themselves. Was that protection? Or violence? If you learned difficult things about my past, would you want to know? He'd tried to warn her. Grace pulled herself up and walked back. Her phone sat on the couch, and as she picked it up, it buzzed. Anthony. Dinner tomorrow? There's somewhere I'd like to take you. Grace stared at the message. Her fingers moved before her brain could stop them. Grace, is your last name Moretti? She hit send and watched the screen. 3 dots appeared, stopped, appeared again. Finally, a response. Anthony. Yes, 1 word, no explanation. Grace's tears fell freely. Grace, did you know who I was? Did you know about Daniel? The dots appeared again. Anthony. Yes, I knew from the beginning. We need to talk. Please. Let me explain. Grace's hands shook. He'd known. From the very first date, he'd known her brother died in an explosion connected to his family, and he'd said nothing. Grace. The cafe near St. Catherine's. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. Don't be late. She powered off her phone before he could respond. Grace sat in her dark apartment, Daniel's photo on the mantel catching the streetlight from outside, and tried to understand how the man who'd made her feel safe could be the same man whose family had destroyed her life. Outside, the city of Boston continued its evening routine, indifferent to one woman's shattered world. Inside, Grace Miller learned that sometimes the person you trust most is the person you should have feared all along, and that knowledge changed everything. The cafe meeting lasted 6.5 minutes. Grace arrived first, ordering nothing, sitting at a corner table with her back to the wall. When Anthony walked in, she watched him scan the room, spot her, and head over with an expression that was equal parts relief and dread. He sat down. She didn't offer a greeting. Is your last name Moretti? Grace asked immediately, her voice flat and controlled. Yes. Are you the head of the Moretti crime family? I inherited my father's organization when he died, yes. But Grace, my brother died in the same explosion that killed your father. I know. You've known since the beginning? Anthony met her eyes directly. Yes. Luca provided background on you before the blind date. I saw Daniel's name in the file. And you said nothing. Grace's voice was rising now, drawing glances from other customers. You sat across from me and let me tell you about him, about how much I missed him, and you never once mentioned that your family was involved in the explosion that killed him. My family didn't plant that bomb, but you knew about it. You knew there was a connection, and you chose to hide it from me. I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to lose me. Grace's eyes were bright with unshed tears. There's a difference. Anthony's jaw tightened. You're right. I was selfish. I was cowardly. I should have told you everything that first night. But Grace, I need you to understand something. I know who killed your brother. His name is Vincent Romano. He was my father's advisor, and he planted that bomb to eliminate my family and take control of the organization. Your brother was innocent. He was just walking past at the wrong moment. And what did you do about it? I've been building a case against him for 5 years. Vincent covered his tracks well. He walked away from the organization, built a legitimate business empire, became respectable. But I've been collecting evidence, financial records, witness testimony, everything I need to prove what he did. Why? Grace's voice cracked. Why do you care about justice for my brother? You don't even know him. Because 12 innocent people died that day, Anthony said quietly. Because Vincent deserves to pay for what he did, and because you deserve the truth. The truth? Grace laughed bitterly. The truth is that you're a criminal. You run an organized crime family. You hurt people, Anthony. That's what you do. And I was falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, sharp and painful. Anthony started to reach across the table, then stopped himself. I know I can't undo what my family is. I know I can't bring Daniel back, but I can give you justice. Let me do that. Let me at least do that much. Grace stood abruptly, grabbing her bag. I don't want your justice. I don't want anything from you. Grace, stay away from me, Anthony. Stay away from the music center. Stay away from my life. She walked out without looking back. Anthony sat alone at the table for a long time, staring at the chair where she'd been, before finally pulling out his phone and making a call. "Luca, I need you to move up the timeline on Vincent, tonight." "Tony, we're not ready." "Make it ready. I want everything we have delivered to the FBI and to Grace Miller, tonight. If we move too fast, Vincent might—" "I don't care. Do it." Anthony hung up and made a second call, this one to Vincent himself. "We need to meet, tonight, Old Waterfront Pier, where it happened." Vincent's voice was smooth, unconcerned. "That's dramatic, even for you, Tony. What's this about?" "Justice," Anthony said, 10 years late. He ended the call and looked out the cafe window at the Boston streets, thinking about Grace and the way she'd looked at him with such betrayal and hurt. He couldn't fix what he'd broken, couldn't undo his lies, but he could give her the truth about her brother, even if it destroyed him in the process. The old waterfront pier stood abandoned, a relic from Boston's industrial past. Rusted metal and rotting wood stretched out over black water, and at the far end where the explosion had occurred, a memorial plaque marked the spot where 12 people had died. Anthony arrived first, standing near the memorial, reading names he'd memorized years ago. Daniel Miller, age 16. Headlights cut through the darkness. Vincent Romano stepped out of a luxury sedan, flanked by 2 large men who were clearly armed. "This is quite the location you've chosen," Vincent said, approaching casually. "Sentimental?" "Educational," Anthony replied. "I thought you should see what you did." Vincent's smile didn't waver. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. You planted the bomb, 2014. You killed my father, my uncle, and 10 innocent people to take control of an organization you had no right to." "That's a fascinating theory. Do you have any proof?" "Yes." For the first time, Vincent's expression flickered. "You're bluffing." Anthony pulled out his phone and pressed play. Vincent's voice filled the quiet night air, captured from a conversation 3 months earlier that Vincent had thought was private. "Your father was weak, Tony. He was going to dismantle everything we'd built. Someone had to act. Someone had to preserve the legacy." "By killing him?" "By doing what was necessary. 12 people. Regrettable. But necessary." The recording ended. Vincent's face had gone pale. "You recorded me." "For 3 months. Every conversation, every phone call, every moment you thought you were safe." Anthony's voice was ice cold. "I have financial records proving you laundered money through shell companies to finance the bombing. I have testimony from the demolitions expert you hired. He's already cooperating with federal investigators. I have everything, Vincent." Vincent's men reached for their weapons. Anthony didn't move. "Draw those guns and 20 FBI agents come out of the darkness. This entire pier is surrounded. You can run or you can surrender. Either way, your life as you know it ends tonight." Vincent's jaw clenched. "You'd really destroy everything? Expose the entire organization? Ruin yourself just to take me down?" "I'd burn it all to the ground to give Grace Miller the truth about her brother." "Who?" "Daniel Miller, age 16, one of the people you murdered." Vincent stared at him. "You're doing this for a woman?" "I'm doing this because it's right," Anthony said quietly. "Because I'm done living in a world where men like you face no consequences. Because I'm tired of protecting an organization built on blood and lies." Vincent studied him for a long moment, then slowly raised his hands. "You've changed, Tony. Your father would be disappointed. My father would be alive if not for you." "True enough." Federal agents emerged from the shadows then, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Vincent and his men were surrounded in seconds, cuffed and read their rights. One of the agents approached Anthony. "Mr. Moretti, we'll need you to come in for questioning. Extensive questioning." "I understand. I'm prepared to cooperate fully." You realize that means testifying against members of your own organization. I do. Some of these men are family. I know. The agent studied him carefully. Why are you doing this? Anthony looked out at the water, at the memorial plaque, at the place where Daniel Miller's life had ended too soon. Because someone needs to. 3 days later, the news broke across every channel in Boston. Vincent Romano arrested in 2014 waterfront bombing FBI. Key evidence provided by Anthony Moretti Jr., Moretti cooperating in broader investigation into organized crime. Anthony sat in his penthouse, watching the coverage with the sound muted. His phone had been ringing constantly. Lawyers, associates, people wanting explanations or offering threats. He'd ignored all of them, except one message, an email from an anonymous account with no subject line. When he opened it, there was only one line. Thank you. GM Anthony read it 3 times, then closed his laptop. It wasn't forgiveness, wasn't reconciliation, but it was acknowledgement. Grace knew the truth about her brother now, knew that Daniel's death hadn't been random, knew that someone was paying for it. That would have to be enough, even if the cost was everything else he'd wanted. 2 weeks after Vincent's arrest, Grace returned to St. Catherine's Music Center. She'd taken time off, time to process everything, to grieve again for Daniel, to understand the complicated truth about his death. Sister Margaret had visited her at home, bringing tea and quiet wisdom. Forgiveness is a process, not a decision, the nun had said. It doesn't mean excusing what was done. It means releasing the weight so you can move forward without being crushed by it. Grace had cried then, ugly tears that came from a place deeper than words. I don't know how to forgive him, she'd admitted. He lied to me. He let me fall in love with him while hiding who he was. He also gave you the truth about Daniel. He destroyed his own life to give you justice. That doesn't erase the lies. No, Sister Margaret had agreed, but it does mean something. What it means, that's up to you to decide. Now, 2 weeks later, Grace unlocked the music center's doors early Sunday morning, planning to prepare for the week ahead. She flipped on the lights and stopped. Anthony sat at the piano. Beside him, an 8-year-old boy she didn't recognize struggled through a simple melody with only his left hand. That's it, Jamie, Anthony was saying softly. You don't need both hands to make something beautiful. You just need heart. Jamie hit a wrong note and frowned. It sounds wrong. It sounds human, Anthony corrected gently. That's what makes it real. That's what makes it matter. Try again. Jamie tried. This time, the notes flowed a little smoother. Grace stood frozen in the doorway, unable to process what she was seeing. Anthony looked up. Their eyes met. Neither spoke for a long moment. Then Grace set her bag down slowly and walked over. How long have you been coming here? She asked quietly. A week. Sister Margaret said the center needed volunteers. I thought maybe I could help. Teaching piano? Learning, mostly. He gestured to Jamie. Jamie's teaching me that strength takes many forms, that limitations are just challenges waiting for creative solutions. Jamie looked up at Grace with a huge grin. Mr. Anthony isn't very good yet, Miss Grace, but he practices every day, just like you taught us. Grace felt tears prick her eyes. Is that right? Yeah, he says if I can play with one hand, he can learn to play too. We're going to do a duet someday. Anthony stood slowly. Grace, Not here, she said. Can you walk with me? They stepped outside into the crisp autumn morning. Leaves swirled around their feet in shades of gold and crimson. I read everything, Grace said finally. The news reports, the FBI statements, Vincent's confession, all of it. And I'm still angry. I'm still hurt. You lied to me, Anthony. You let me trust you while hiding something massive. I know. I'm sorry. I know you are. Grace wrapped her arms around herself. But I also understand why you gave the FBI everything, why you destroyed your own organization. Do you? She met his eyes. You did it for Daniel, for me. You gave up everything to give me the truth I deserved from the beginning. It was the least I could do. It was everything. Grace's voice cracked. Vincent's going to prison for life because of you. The truth about the explosion is finally out there. Daniel's name has been cleared of any suggestion he was involved with gangs or crime. And you're testifying against your own family to make sure justice is served. I should have done it 10 years ago. But you're doing it now. That matters. Anthony looked at her carefully. Grace, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything from you. But I need you to know. Everything I told you about protecting people, about wanting to do something meaningful, that was true. My methods were wrong. My world was built on violence and fear. But the desire to be better, to be someone worth knowing, that was always real. I believe you, Grace said quietly. You do? I see you with Jamie. I see you here, volunteering, learning to teach piano to kids who need patience and belief. That's not performance. That's not manipulation. That's who you actually are underneath everything else. I'm testifying in 3 days, Anthony said. Depending on what the prosecutors find, I could face charges myself. I might go to prison, Grace, for a long time. I know. So I can't offer you anything. Can't promise you a future or even a present. I just wanted you to know that these last few weeks, knowing you, learning from you, they've been the best weeks of my life. You made me want to be better. And even if I never see you again after today, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be the man you believed I could be. Grace wiped tears from her cheeks. You're not that same person you were when we met. No, I'm not. You're someone who chose truth over comfort, justice over self-preservation, someone who's trying to build something good from the wreckage of what came before. I'm trying. That's all I can do. Grace took a deep breath. I can't promise you anything either. I can't promise I'm ready to forgive everything or that we can just pick up where we left off. But I can promise you this. I'll visit when you testify. I'll be there when you face the consequences of choices you're making to do what's right. And after that, we'll see. One day at a time. Anthony's eyes widened. You do that? You gave me the truth about Daniel. You gave me justice when you could have protected yourself instead. The least I can do is stand beside you while you face what comes next. Grace. She held up a hand. I'm not saying we're back together. I'm not saying everything is fine. I'm saying I see you trying to be better, and I believe in people who try. That has to be enough for now. Anthony nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Grace took his hand. Not quite the way she had before, but not hostile either. Something tentative, something new. Come on, she said. Jamie needs help with the next section, and if you're going to volunteer here, you need to actually learn how to teach. I'd like that. They walked back inside together, toward the sound of a child playing piano with one hand, creating something beautiful from limitation. 3 months later, Grace sat in a federal courthouse, watching Anthony Moretti testify against men who'd once called him family. He spoke clearly, without hesitation, detailing years of criminal activity and naming names that would put dozens of people behind bars. During a recess, Grace met him in the hallway. How are you holding up? She asked. I'm okay. It's strange, but I feel lighter than I have in years. That's good. Grace, after this is over, after I know what charges I'm facing, I'd like to keep volunteering at St. Catherine's, if you'll let me. Of course. The kids love you. Jamie talks about Mr. Anthony constantly. Anthony smiled slightly. He's a remarkable kid. So are you. He looked at her carefully. I'm not a kid, Grace. I'm a man who's made terrible choices and is trying to atone for them. I know. But you're also someone who chose redemption when you could have chosen power. Someone who valued truth more than comfort. Someone who's teaching disabled children that they're worthy of patience and belief. She paused. That's remarkable, too. They stood in the courthouse hallway, two people trying to build something new from broken pieces. "One day at a time?" Anthony asked. "One day at a time," Grace agreed. It wasn't a promise, wasn't certainty, but it was a beginning. And sometimes a beginning is enough. 6 months after that, Anthony was sentenced to 2 years in prison for financial crimes related to the organization. Lenient given his cooperation, but still time that needed serving. Grace visited every week. They talked about the music center, about Jamie's progress and Marcus's acceptance into a youth orchestra, about the new adaptive instruments they'd purchased and the families they were serving. "I got accepted into a teacher training program," Grace told him during one visit. "It's for people who want to specialize in adaptive music education. I'll start when you get out." "That's wonderful, Grace." "I was thinking, when you're released, there's a teaching assistant position open at the center. Full-time. It doesn't pay much. I'll take it. You don't even know what it involves yet. Doesn't matter. If it means working alongside you, doing something that matters, I'll take it." Grace smiled. "You really have changed." "I'm still changing. Every day. That's all any of us can do." When visiting hours ended, Grace walked to her car and sat quietly for a moment before starting the engine. She thought about Daniel, about the 16-year-old brother who'd loved music and died too soon. She thought about Anthony, about the man he'd been and the man he was becoming. She thought about forgiveness, how it wasn't a single moment but a long journey toward letting go of weight that crushed you. She thought about love, how it could survive lies and betrayal if both people were willing to rebuild from truth. And she thought about the future, uncertain, complicated, but somehow full of hope. Grace started the engine and drove toward home. For the first time since Daniel died, she felt something she'd thought was lost forever: peace. 18 months after Vincent Romano's arrest, Anthony Moretti was released from federal prison. Grace was waiting when he walked out. They stood in the parking lot, autumn wind swirling leaves around them, neither quite sure what to say. "Hi," Anthony finally said. "Hi. You didn't have to come." "I wanted to." They looked at each other, measuring the distance that still existed between them, the bridges that had been rebuilt and those still under construction. "The teaching assistant position is still open," Grace said. "If you want it." "I want it. It starts Monday, 8 in the morning. Don't be late." "I won't be." Grace took a step closer. "Anthony, I need you to understand something. What we had before, the romance, the blind dates, the fantasy version, that's over. That was built on lies and things left unsaid." "I know. But what we have now, this honesty, this truth, this commitment to being better people together, that's real. And real is harder. It's messier. It requires work and patience and forgiveness that has to be earned every single day." "I understand." "Do you?" Grace met his eyes. "Because I need to know you're committed to this version, the real version, the one where we both show up honestly, even when it's hard." Anthony stepped closer, but didn't reach for her. "I've had 18 months to think about what I want, what matters. And Grace, you matter more than anything. Not the fantasy version of you, not the idea of you. You, the woman who sees broken kids and teaches them they're not broken at all. The woman who believes in second chances, even when every instinct says not to. The woman who visited me every single week in prison because she believes people can change." "Can they? Can you?" "I'm trying every day to be worthy of your faith in me. That's all I can promise." Grace studied him for a long moment. Then she took his hand. "That's enough," she said. "That's all I'm asking." They walked to her car together, two people who'd found each other through tragedy and lies and were choosing every day to build something true. It wasn't the story either of them had expected, but it was real. And real, they were learning, was the only thing worth fighting for. Some truths destroy. Others set you free. The line between them isn't always clear. But when you choose honesty over comfort, accountability over convenience, and love over fear, you find something rare. You find redemption. Not because you deserve it, but because someone believed you were worth the long, difficult work of becoming better. This isn't a romance that ignores reality. It's a romance that faces reality head-on and chooses love anyway. Not the perfect kind, not the easy kind, the real kind. The kind that says, I see who you were. I see who you're trying to be. And I'm willing to walk that difficult road beside you. That's not just love. That's grace in its truest, most profound form. And grace in all its forms is what sets us free. Sometimes the person who breaks your heart is the same person who gives you the truth that heals it. Sometimes the name you feared most belongs to the person teaching you to trust again. Sometimes redemption looks like a man sitting at a piano, learning to play one-handed beside a child who believes in second chances. And sometimes, just sometimes, love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone willing to become better, one honest day at a time. If this story moved you, if you believe in second chances and hard-won love, subscribe to join us every evening. We share stories of courage, truth, and hearts that refuse to give up. See you tomorrow night.